Welcome to Glow, the podcast that illuminates your path to personal transformation. So join me as we explore ways to elevate the quality of your life, forge a deeper connection within yourself, cultivate healthier relationships with others, and navigate life's challenges with more resilience while you embrace a life of more ease and empowerment on your own terms. I'm so excited that you're here. You are not alone. Let's walk this path together. Welcoming you into the third episode of the Glow podcast. So in this one, we are talking about attunement, how to really attune to our bodies and to encourage deeper healing into our life. A lot of practitioners and people in the spiritual community these days talk about regulating the nervous system a lot more than what they used to. It's become a buzz thing, this whole regulation. And there's a misconception around that, where regulation of the nervous system, people are referring to as feeling calm, where when we are actually regulating the nervous system, we want to be connected in towards ourselves and connected to whatever it is that we're feeling, and building that window of space where we're able to build resilience and build strength to feeling what it is we're actually feeling. So this is what I'm touching on today. And if you've been inviting some depth into your healing lately, this is a great podcast for you if you want to dig a little bit deeper into that shadow world, if you want to experience better insight to what your body is trying to tell you, then you won't want to miss this one. I talk about how healing your trauma, your stored, suppressed emotions, can actually really start to change your life and have a really big impact on not just yourself, but everyone around you. My main intention behind this podcast today and what I felt into was that I want to allow everybody, not just women, to feel into their fullest potential and to create a life where they do feel safe and where they can feel empowered. When I get the opportunity to speak about this, whether it be through the healing sessions that I do, workshops or talks that I present, or this podcast, which is a beautiful free resource for anyone who's looking to do the deeper work. When I get the opportunity to speak into this stuff, I am a huge advocate against domestic and family violence. And throughout the Glow podcast, I may reference back to my own experience with domestic and family violence. And so a little trigger warning on today if you have experienced this or you're currently going through it, and just to push pause and take a break whenever you need to. Before I get into this topic, I would love to invite all the energy from any woman or man who has not been able to use their voice, who are currently really trying hard to use their voice, and just to the people who are really trying to establish safety in their life and not quite sure on where to start. And I always like to feel that in a way that I can represent some of those people, because I was one of those women who couldn't speak up, who did speak up and was punished for it. I've lived that. I know that you've probably heard this quote: in order to change the world, you must first change yourself. And when you're coming through adverse, challenging situations, traumatic experiences, you're experiencing powerlessness, helplessness, even hopelessness, that this quote is something that really rang true for me when I was going through the depths of my experience. And I liken it to just literally crawling back to safety, crawling back to that safe space so I can find empowerment, because I can't just all of a sudden wake up and feel my personal power and feel that I'm great at setting boundaries. I have to actually establish safety first. And so through having that experience, now when I see people on their healing journeys, it's step one, which is what we're going to talk about today, is the ways in which we can feel safe. So when we're attuning to our body, we're understanding ourselves and our responses to things, meaning our anxiety, our mood swings, our depression, our overwhelm, the reactions we might have to overwhelm of checking out, And so understanding where our nervous system is at is something that we're going to dig deeper on in today's episode. And then when we establish that beautiful piece of safety, then we can start to explore ways to feel empowered, which would be to make those choices from a place of power rather than what anyone else wants, or having to, people please, go past your boundaries. I know myself included, and a lot of people that I work with, when asked the question, what do you want or what do you need, that sometimes it can be a very, very difficult thing to answer. And you're left confused, curious, upset that you don't know what you want or what you need. And as women, I can speak to that because I am a woman and I work with a lot of women. The surprising majority of us have been told or made feel that we're too much, too sensitive for just feeling our feelings, that it comes across maybe we're too needy. And as a result, we've learned to suppress our voice, suppress our feelings, and not listen to our needs and wants or have our own ideas. It has been this way for women just through generations of people pleasing or keeping small to keep other people comfortable or to keep ourselves in a safe place in society. This is what has been changing a lot. And when people are swinging into too far into their masculine or too far into their feminine without experiencing both qualities within themselves, I think we then can develop toxic traits in both. And from what I've seen and how I've experienced the toxic feminine side of it, which is what I'm more experienced to talk about in, is that the toxic traits of the feminine will manipulate. Sometimes it's in a way that control and manipulation comes across in that toxic form because we're not actually realizing that we're trying just to have a place where we feel safe, where we can experience our feelings and emotions. And I know that the vast majority of people that I've worked with have all been told at one point in time that they are too much. And so then they lessen themselves or they shrink back down. Where in my experience, I know in those places where I have been told that if I seek a different environment, if I seek to surround myself with different people, more than likely I have been told different things. Perhaps you're in the wrong environment. And so we're starting to get curious to how is my nervous system feeling lately? What am I surrounding myself with that may not resonate with me feeling held, safe, that I can be myself? All of these things. If we were to explore our nervous system in a way of just thinking about stress and overwhelm and where you may be experiencing this in your life. So when we experience overwhelm, is our reaction to get busier, to control more, to try to help ourselves feel better by feeling that we're in control of it and not listen to our body at all? Or is our response perhaps to shut down and not make a choice at all? So either way, whichever way we're swinging, it can be very exhausting to keep landing in those places, and almost like yo-yoing between the two is also possible. When we're working to change our lives, I find a really beautiful healing tool to just inject into this part of the episode is when we turn judgment into curiosity. So we stop judging ourselves. We stop allowing that inner critic to be so harsh. And we get more curious, which gives us a zoom out to the situation. So if you remember nothing about this whole episode, the main thing, if you can remember, curiosity is a very beautiful healing tool. And if you can just remember that, just to be curious to your environment, be curious to your responses, then that is a beautiful place to start. So I wanted to speak to the body today, to attuning to our body. When we think about our mind is a place of stories, of patterns. It's logical, it's analytical, and it has our memories, our conditioning from the past. When we separate into a different section, into our body, so our body is the place of feeling, sensations, emotions. And because we're energy before we're matter, if you think about emotions being energy in motion, And if we store or suppress ourselves or what we're feeling or told that we're too much, then we have suppressed or stagnant energy in the body. This eventually starts to create tension, dis-ease, things like that. So when we talk about feeling safe, the mind and the body, if we think about them in two separate forms and we want to bring them together, so a mind-body connection. So if we're in the mind, for example, let's explore this. When we go living from the mind only, we could be fast forwarding into the future where we're creating more anxiety and stress for ourselves because we're preempting all the terrible things that might happen from what's happened to us. So we're just preempting things, which means that we're creating them. They haven't happened yet, but we're prepping for them. We're calling them in. We may even have a belief of, oh, that always happens to me, or I never get what I want, so why would I this time? Things like that. So we probably tend to be busier, throw ourselves into work, all of that kind of stuff. So it's more of that hyper state when we're forward thinking or for living in the mind alone. If we trail the complete opposite way, so we've still bypassed the body and we live from the past, it is more of a denser feeling. We're shut down maybe, where you may experience more sadness or depression. And if we live from the past, there's a good chance that we're blocking ourselves to receiving anything new because we're still holding that vibration of something old. And so if we emit or resonate that frequency energetically, then we're just going to keep creating the same thing. So if we're used to being abandoned, we're always going to find a partner, a friend, people that will leave us, people that will treat us a certain way because we've got that for sure that's going to happen. I'm living from that past mentality, or I'm still in victim mentality. So I'm always going to be that. I'm always going to draw that in towards myself. And so when we talk about the mind and the body being connected, we're experiencing thoughts perhaps of, oh, well, I'm not good enough. And so that, that thing never works out for me. So why would I be chosen? Or whatever these thoughts are that we're having, if we can then acknowledge the thought and feel what our body feels in relation to that. So if it's sensations around being abandoned, not being chosen, you're actually feeling that in your body. You might feel a heavy chest. You might feel an ache in your stomach. You might feel a little bit of anxiety starting to happen. And then you might feel that your response may be to completely ignore it or get into a fight or flight situation. Or maybe you just throw your hands up and just appease whoever or whatever you need to make it go away. So we don't want to bypass our emotions. And sometimes it feels safer to bypass our emotions because we haven't been told that it's okay to experience them, or we've been shut down in some way, told we're too much, whatever it is for you. There may be reasons that it doesn't feel safe yet. So when we can establish safety in the mind and the body, we're having our thoughts and we're connecting to the feeling, then we're in the present moment. The present moment is a space where we can zoom out and we can make new choices. We can rewire the brain from this place. It is the place where we bring in that curiosity. So maybe if we have been told that we're too sensitive and that this is what our wants and needs are, it's actually a place where we can take a pause, take a nice deep breath and ask ourselves, is this what I really want? Does this feel good to me? Does this feel good in my body? Is it really too much? There's some beautiful questions that can happen in that space of curiosity when we allow the thoughts and we allow the feelings. Although me explaining it like this might sound really easy and you might be thinking, well, why isn't that happening? It's work. It's work to get there. This is why people call it the inner work or shadow work, where we realize parts of ourselves, and that those parts of ourselves we have been trying really hard, probably over many, many years, to keep hidden. And so to feel safe by understanding the nervous system, by regulating it, which just means to feel connected, and in that space where we can experience what we need to when it's time to. And connect the mind and the body, connect to the self, connect to whatever part is presenting itself to you to be with. Because perhaps that part when you were a child was pushed away or ignored or something like that. And so rather than expecting that same outcome, how can we get curious to really meeting the needs that you have to allow your nervous system, to allow your whole system to feel that belonging, to feel that safety. And because from there, we start to empower ourselves, to liberate ourselves of these old stories that really do keep us stuck. When we do start to explore ourselves deeply and we attune to the body in this way, and the nervous system starts to become a little bit more resilient, or that expansion and contraction, we're okay with acceptance of sometimes we're going to feel this, sometimes we're going to feel that. It's all okay to be there. I can bring acceptance and love to all parts of myself through these processes and create support systems around me so I feel safe. It'll be very specific to the individual, what the needs and the wants and the desired outcome is, to how that journey will look. It's not the same for everybody. And this is why when you have coaches saying, if you follow my 5-step program, you're going to get this. I don't believe that to be true, because everyone has their own unique ways of finding, and there's many teachers also to help you find your unique journey. A personal story that I want to share with you is around when I started listening to my body. It was a time where I came out of a very toxic marriage, and I had a lot of times tried to tell people that I wasn't listened to. I told people and they would tell me one thing and then tell me that it was sorted out, it was safe to go home. And then I find out later they'd made a joke of it. I had people that saw bruises on my arms, and one person had a little bit of a chuckle and said, "Oh, what did you do this time?" Things like that, where there's so much enabling around when you think that that's normal, when you're around people that think that that behavior is normal, it's very hard to start to come away and change that. And so I found it very difficult to be in my body and to listen to what my body had been trying to tell me almost my whole life, but especially the 10 years that I was in this toxic relationship. And so when I got myself to safety, when I got out of that experience, I refer to it as the false sense of freedom, because I left and I thought to myself, I'm out, that's it, I'm free. And I wasn't. That's when it began. That's when the healing had to begin. That's where I had all those choices of, can I really do this? Can I really get through this? Because I am so broken. I am so far away from myself. I don't even know where to start. And so I started with mindfulness practices. I started with being told I had to get on all this medication to help me sleep, to help with my anxiety, my PTSD, the bouts of depression, all those things that I'd experienced post coming out and fearing for my life. And so when I went to the doctor, I had asked, what alternative things can I be doing for this? And, therapy is one of them. So cognitive therapy was great for me to understand my patterns, to understand my stories, to understand why I chose something like that for myself, why some part of me thought that that was normal, and how I was actually, in fact, getting my needs met through that. My need to be the fixer, my conditioning of, if I just show up and I be everything and I hold all the responsibility, then I'm safe. I have a place in the world, even though that didn't serve me and it was actually severely unsafe in the end. It was what I knew. It was what was comfortable for my system. And so I had to change this. And this is not a fast process. This is a daily practice kind of a process. And I found this incredible therapist who started doing mindfulness practices with me. And so I started to meditate. I was so bad at it. that I would have to go and have these sessions where he would just talk to me about very basic general things, but it would actually blow my mind, and it would help me to connect with my children. It would help me to slow down. It would help me to start getting to sleep. And so there was all these things because I didn't want to take the medication. I wanted to find my way that I felt comfortable with. And so after doing that, I found my movement practices. So naturally, I always liked to move, but I'd stopped doing that because I was just so busy surviving, raising kids, going to court, working 3 or 4 jobs now as a single mum, trying to just get through those court processes and get myself to a place where I could just start my life again. And that took a very long time, a very long time. So when it was time for me to feel into my body, it happened in a way that I wasn't expecting it. I didn't say, okay, I'm going to do that now, I'm ready. I was experiencing just a lot of things going wrong. I had a lot of health issues over the time that I was in that abusive relationship. But then when I came out and I would have to hand my son over, my whole lower back would completely kind of seize up, and I could no longer teach yoga or Pilates. It got to the point where I nearly had to quit teaching movement because I couldn't bend. And I saw many, many, many different therapists. I had scans, I had everything done, and most people said everything looks fine. We don't know what's going on with you. And that was 3 years of a very, very frustrating, chronic pain related experience. And what I found through the mindfulness practices is I started exploring pain, the pain in my body, how intense it was, why I couldn't bend, why that area. I started getting really curious to what was happening physically for me. And then I started noticing the times when it would really seize up. And from there, it was just this exploration. So I would lay in bed at night time and breathe down into my lower back and my lower belly and explore what my body was trying to say to me. And I noticed it was around not feeling safe. I noticed it was around having to hand my son over and me not knowing if he was safe. And it was this whole thing around safety, and I didn't quite know where to start or how to find safety or what that even meant. Because when you have complex trauma, it's very rare that you have a very steady, cruisy life where not much is going on. There tends to be drama. And when there's not drama, you're trying to find ways to create chaos. And when there is joy, you're finding ways to look over your shoulder, and that thing that stops the joy is it's coming, it's always coming. And so you're always hyper vigilant to the next thing. Or if that thing doesn't come, you're creating it because that's known, because that is what feels safe to your system. And so by checking in with yourself more often, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? Exploring if there is chronic pain in your body, using your breath as a tool to explore the edges of that. See what you can relax, see what you're holding. What are you holding in there? Ever since that point in time of coming out of that, I have not had any chronic lower back pain, injuries, nothing ever since. And it's been many, many years now. And I actually forget that that existed in my body because I just haven't had a flare up from it. So once I addressed the emotions behind what my back was doing, because there was no physical reason for it to be there, just that I was holding that much tension there. When I addressed the emotional stuff, when I really felt what my body was saying, the healing was long lasting. I got to address it from a very, very deep place within myself, which meant that I had to trail back into core woundings. How did this happen? Where is this from? When did this start? And more than likely, it does start when we're little kids and we are conditioned to believe a certain thing. And then from there, learning that there's different ways to regulate. One of my go-to ways when I was first coming out of that relationship, for example, I needed to move my body. I needed to almost exhaust myself so I could fall asleep. And so I went to the gym. I started boxing. I did more high intensity movement because I had a lot of anger. I had a lot of nervous tension in my body to release, to get out. And so naturally, I was eventually more drawn to breath work, to things that would clear, release, or like try and purge these things from my body. And then somewhere along the line, I hit this wall of needing to be really gentle with myself and finding ways to regulate where I would cocoon myself, where I spent some time on my own more often, where I felt into not moving so fast, to not rushing to the next thing, to really nurturing myself, self-care, self-love, all those things that were a lot more gentle for my system, but things that I'd never explored before. And I had never explored them because I thought that side of things was probably weak, or to be vulnerable was showed weakness, until I really learned that vulnerability and that softness and that ability to be grounded through the chaos and not searching for the chaos was actually very strong and very resilient to find that soft place where I could regulate in a different way. So there's many things we can do to regulate our nervous system, which is just to create that space for ourselves to connect to how we're feeling and to allow it to be there, whether it's sadness, grief, rage, and to process it in a way that our body is calling for in that moment. And so permission in any of those moments to not be all things to all people at all times of the day. When we have these reference points that we hold on to, we're constantly multiple things at one time. But whereas if our mind and body is connected and we're present, we can just simply be one thing at a time. And so while I'm thinking about all of this stuff and bringing this into the light, I'm bringing this forward from a place where I'm just connected to myself. I'm connected to what I feel like sharing in this moment around this topic, and I'm just letting it come rather than thinking about all the mum duties I have after this. I'm not trailing off into all the other things I've got to be when I stop recording this. So why I say that and why I'm inviting you to be curious is just to start to feel into any reference points that you have your energy attached to. Even if it's a role that you're not playing at the moment, you can put that hat on or play that role again later. But while you're in the moment, it's important that we let go of some reference points and give ourselves some space to feel, to listen to our thoughts, to listen to the body. And I always found that journaling helps to rewire the brain. It helps to bring you in a place of a zoom out where you can just write things down, especially if you're not in a place where you can voice those things. And that it's not a quick journey to healing these parts of ourselves that have our deepest core woundings and things that we've protected ourselves from feeling our whole life. So it makes sense that it's a journey. It makes sense that it needs to be slow. It makes sense that if we unravel it and we walk our way to it in micro steps sometimes, rather than leaping, that we are more steady in life, and that we can find those moments where if there is chaos around us, that we can realize, okay, this is the perfect time for me to ground myself. I've learnt from all those little experiences that I've had and that my body's received those new experiences, that this is the time where I'd usually do this, but I'm just going to give myself that little bit of space and see what else I could do instead. So that's where the mind-body connection and helping us to regulate our nervous systems by moving, by breathing. So if you can relate to what I'm saying and you feel a bit all or nothing, and there's those addictive kind of behaviors in there, sometimes it's good to learn that slowness. So as you're slowing it down, it's not as overwhelming. It's not as terrifying. So then your system doesn't have a big response to something big. It's just breaking it down into small little steps. So we take the time to understand that there's many parts that make us who we are. And those parts deserve our time. Those parts deserve our acceptance, our love. And we can relate that even to an inner critic. And I've actually heard a lot of people say, oh, I just shut the door on that inner critic, or I just tell that inner critic, to go away or to be quiet. But what if we really paused with the inner critic? We took that pause and we got curious to it. What does that part of us need? Why is it judging us so harshly? And if I were to just shut the door on it, how would that part of me feel? If I'm exiling that part of myself, I'm showing it a harsh energy. I'm not allowing it into my life. I'm not allowing it to be part of myself. Whereas I feel like if I open the door to the inner critic and I ask this part of myself, why? Why do you feel to be so harsh? Where did this come from? How would you like it to be? What new role would this part of me want to play? And this all comes from understanding what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. And this all stems from understanding ourselves well. And how do I heal this or bring this aspect in? Because the more you push those parts of yourself away, the louder that they might get, and the more hidden that they'll remain. And the more hidden that these parts are, the more it's going to loop around in your life, and you keep wondering, why does this same pattern keep happening? Why am I still stuck? Why am I so blocked? The answer is that there are parts of you trying to communicate. And so we can slow down and listen to the mind and the body and be more present with ourselves. It is definitely a way through that gentleness, through that softness, to become a little more accepting, to become a little more loving, a little more kind towards ourselves. And the thing is that it doesn't seem safe to go to those places in a hard and fast way. If it is a little unexpected, or it is hard and fast, and it's a big awakening or a big change or a really fast illness, that it's important that we have support systems and people around that can understand and that won't enable us, and that will lovingly and firmly stand there and be with us through whatever comes in those moments. And the environments that we put ourselves in are directly going to influence the way or how much you can heal yourself. If you're not in the right environment, you won't be able to do much healing. If you're in the right environment and your nervous system can feel safe and settled, more healing can occur. So it definitely depends on the wants and needs of whatever part is present, whatever your body is experiencing, whatever thoughts you are thinking. It is a very multi-layered experience to heal yourself deeply and to go to those places that you've tried to avoid in a way to feel safe. And so when we can understand it like that, and to understand that, what if I could feel safe in a new way? What is this new way that I can establish safety for myself? And how do I start with the nervous system? Where is my system at? Do I need to release nervous tension? Do I need movement? Do I need to be soft? Do I need to rest? And if you're not sure, this is a great point in time to work with someone that understands the body. Any somatic therapist, anyone that's going to help you to drop into that and to walk that journey with you. So I'm always available for online sessions. Link will be off my website, jessiemoss.com. You can always buy my book Open. There's beautiful integrations at the end of the chapters, and that will get you in a really good journaling practice, because there's always reflections at the end of most chapters and throughout the book. Otherwise, start to check in with yourself. Just take 1 minute out of your day to create a little pocket in time where you start to really feel where your energy is going, to take a few breaths and to ask yourself, what's on my mind and what's on my heart today? And how do I want to move in the world? How do I want to show up in the world? And just from that, you're creating more presence and more connection to the mind and the body and allowing it all to exist without bypassing any of it. And this is what will bring deeper healing to the world. And this is what will allow that really deep change to ripple out. And it will also, I believe, be what will separate practitioners or leaders into different categories where there are temporary fixes and where there is a certain amount of enabling to feel comfortable. And then there's authenticity and people that want to rip off the Band-Aid and really get to the root cause, the root of the problem, and to liberate people by doing the work themselves. So the more work on ourselves like this that we can do, then we change the world from there. So it's not always about doing all these big things externally. I think the biggest thing, especially if you're in any challenging situations, if you are experiencing big reactions to your trauma still, then it's very small baby steps and breaking it down, micro moving, establishing safety in a different way. And we start there. I'm going to leave this episode here. If there's any feedback that you do want to give me, or there's any topics you want me to dive into a little bit more, please leave feedback for me. I would love to hear from you. So once again, thank you so much for listening to this. And by listening to this, you are supporting me to keep free resources going for people who need it and who are ready for the deeper healing. In the next episode, we are going to talk a little deeper on calling your power back. So we're relating to those reference points that I spoke to before. I want to go deeper into that because once we have our energy back residing within ourselves, we can really change that resonance and start to manifest and bring things into our life from that place of safety, from that place of being connected. And so there's exciting stuff to come that I can't wait to share with you. Please subscribe, follow, share the love. Share this with anyone that you know that may need just that little bit of support. I'm so grateful for you tuning in. Remember that you have choice. You are whole already. You are not alone. And remember to stay curious.